Towson women's lacrosse headed back on the road as we get into the midst of CAA play. We'll talk about the games against the Phoenix and the Tribe today on the Tiger Lacrosse Report. Hello again, fans, and welcome back into the Towson Sports Network studios for today's edition of the Tiger Lacrosse Report. I'm your host, Ben Rosenbaum. After picking up 2 wins to kick off CAA play, the Tigers hit the road first against Elon and then followed up against William & Mary. And to talk about the games, I'm joined, as always, by head coach Sonia LaMonica. Coach, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, as always.
Thank you for joining us. And so, 2-0, we're in the books against Drexel and Delaware, off to Elon and to kick it off. And this is a team that
They've given us trouble in the past, haven't they?
Yeah. You beat them last year in the regular season, and they a crazy double overtime game, I think, in the CAA tournament. A heartbreaker. You always talk about not pumping up games and keeping the focus on it's another game. Here's another day. How important is it for the starters to not get too pumped up, thinking revenge game against Elon, or do you want that?
Sometimes it can work for you, and sometimes not. I think it's a natural thing. I think that's might happen, and if it does, it's meant to be. But I certainly like to keep our focus on, us continuing to improve. And as we talked about kind of from our last weekend, some things that we need to continue to focus on. And I think, we're getting better in areas, and then there's some other pieces that, we've got to pay attention to this too. So I see continued steps being made on the field, and we're just going to keep doing that. So it's now about our lead up, our practice, making sure that we're going through, working hard and ready to compete, because it won't get any easier as we go forward. So, and we're back on the road again, which is fun. It's fun.
Elon's 2-8. They're off to a rough start. However, they're 1-0 in the conference, picking up a win against Hofstra, 12-8.
Yeah.
You look at the schedule. At times, they're having trouble scoring the ball. They had a dog of a schedule early on this year. So still not sure how good this team might be.
Well, that's it.
So how do you examine a team like that who they're taking on top opponents non-conference, and then they come out and they put 12 up on Hofstra to kick off CAA play?
Yeah, I mean, you learn a lot from tough games, and when you come up short, it really exposes things you got to work on. And that was sort of a message for us after our last weekend. We can't get caught up in overlooking some areas that we got to do a better job of, because that could come around and bite us in the butt next game. We got away with it this game. Are we going to get away with it as we move into more teams in conference? So I think, Elon's been battle tested, and I'm no doubt they're hungry to come out and make a statement in conference play. So that's just a good reminder for our team, and that we've got to keep going to work and doing the little things well, and sticking to the game plan, and not deviating too far, and making sure that people are dialed in and focused, because we don't want to slip up.
Stephanie Asher's kind of their point guard, so to speak. She makes them go. They do get production elsewhere, but how important is it? Because you really, when you watch that team, it circles around her. And I'm thinking back to the CAA tournament last year. Everything was going through her. How important is it to almost cut the head off the snake, sort of thing, and for lack of a better term, let the body die, sort of thing? Is that kind of how you approach them, or do you just approach them as you approach any other team?
A bit of both, I think. We've got to recognize, where their emotional leadership comes from, where their spark comes from, and I think it's obviously, for any team, you want to find ways to sort of deflate your opponent mentally, because it is such a mental game, and by making it tougher for those impact players is certainly a good strategy, because teams can respond in a way you wouldn't expect, and you never know what could happen. But a lot of times, if their routine isn't working, that can make it very difficult for a team to stay mentally in the game. And if you can defeat an opponent mentally, as well as working hard and executing in your side, I think typically you're going to come out on top. So Stephanie Asher's an outstanding player, a lot of experience, and she's just a great athlete. and we've got to be ready to limit her, as well as the group around her that will want to step up and fill in if she's not getting as many opportunities.
William and Mary, following the game against Elon, they're 4-8, 0-1. They lost against Hofstra 15-14. Mm-hmm. The Tribe, they're always, you never know what you're going to get out of them. They can give you a tough game. They could be an easier game, for lack of a better term. But, I know this team, you're going to come out there and you're going to treat them like you're playing somebody who's ranked number 1 in the country.
Yeah, we have to. I think that's always a big challenge for any team is getting up for some teams that maybe aren't ranked in the top 25 in the country, but that's certainly not the message in our locker room. When we step out on the field, you can't control your opponent, and everything on paper doesn't mean much, really, at the end of the day. And I think we see that in across the board in our sport. Is you could look at what's going on, but there's so much parity. And it really comes down to there's a lot of talent, a lot of great teams, and it's a fine line between a lot of teams. So you've just got to be ready to get out and compete and control what you can control, and believe and trust in your abilities, and make sure that you're doing the little things well. I mean, that's what it comes down to. So it is a challenge to get up, but that's your job, is to step out and to continue to perform no matter what who your opponent is.
And real quickly before we go, circling back to Carly Telekamp and actually the Delaware game as well, they tried to do what we were just talking about a second ago with Stephanie Asher. They face guarded her and they drifted her all the way out. And are you preparing for that? Like, do you now have to, because you weren't expecting that, are you ready?
Face guarded Emily too,
yeah.
So there was a bit of a double face guard going on. I mean, I think coaches are going to try and find all kinds of ways to take a team out of their rhythm, to disrupt what they typically like to do. And if we're a good team, we have to be prepared for anything. We've gone into plenty of games expecting possible face guards, not always knowing who it might be on, because we know that we've had impact from a variety of different players. So you got to be ready for anything. You can't expect anything, or be ready for anything. And we got to be ready for that moving forward into this weekend. So, I think Delaware, threw something that we weren't expecting, but we were ready for it regardless.
All right. The Tigers take the field against Elon on April 13th at 6 o'clock. That game is available for viewing on the LAC Sports Network, and then 2 days later on the 15th, they take on the William and Mary Tribe at 1. For more news and notes on your Towson women's lacrosse team, make sure you head over to TowsonTigers.com. Coach, thanks for joining us. Good luck this weekend.
Always a pleasure.
And thank you, fans, for joining us. And as always, we'll see you right again next week here on the Tiger Lacrosse Report. For head coach Sonia LaMonica, I'm Ben Rosenbaum. Thanks for joining us. And as always, go Tigers.